Namaste and a very warm welcome to all our viewers and our esteemed guests today. I'm very happy to invite you all to our Indic Samvad on Yoga and Positive Psychology by Center for Consciousness Studies and Inner Transformation under the Indic Academy. We are very delighted to have Dr. Ashish Pandey ji, namaste, who will be sharing his insights in this domain. Raghu Anantanarayanan ji, who is the co-founder at the Center for Consciousness Studies and Inner Transformation. They will be having a dialogue, or as we know it as Samvad in the Indic traditions. I would like to begin our Samvad with an invocation. So wishing all of us to join in energetically. Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Over to you, Raghu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Namrata. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to have a conversation with Ashish ji and share with all our listeners the excellent work that he's been doing. Yeah, but before I allow you to have a direct listening of what he has to say, I'll introduce him and initiate the process with a couple of questions. Yeah. Professor Ashish Pandey ji is an associate professor with Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management at the IIT Bombay. Yeah, he teaches organization development, human resource management, self-management, and leadership. He also engages in consulting and training for organizations and leadership development across many industries and with institutions of higher education. Ashish ji has published more than 40 research articles in the field of yoga and positive psychology, spirituality at the workplace, mindfulness, business and society interface, and also in the best practices in management in globally reputed journals, including the Journal of Management, Journal of Business Ethics, Personal Review, and so on. He has co-edited a volume on indigenous Indian management published by Palgrave Macmillan. He also sits on the editorial board and review boards of international journals like Frontier in Psychology, Humanistic Management Journal, and so on. And his research has been recognized with many awards and fellowships at forums held at the Indian Academy of Management, Academy of Management USA, Fowler Center for Case Western, Indian Institute of Sciences, and so on. So I'm really delighted, Ashish ji, that you can be with us this evening and share your insights and help us to look at this field in a new way. Yeah, so just to get the ball rolling, let me ask you a couple of questions. Yeah. See, I've been reading and following your work for a while and reading your papers and things like that, right? So one of the questions in my mind was that you have been able to move from the very intangible areas of inner development and the inner psychological processes as it's defined in Indic psychology. You're taking ideas like karma yoga, swadhyaya, karuna, ahambhava, right? And things like this. And you give it very interesting mental models. You take us through some mental models and convert these very intangible concepts into very measurable impacts. And you're doing that in a business context, which is usually seen as hard-hearted, number crunching, individualistic, competitive, and so on, right? And your papers have, interesting words like thriving, flourishing, altruism, moral reasoning, and so on. So it kind of awakens a curiosity. Now, how do you manage this bridging? And you seem to have been successful at it. Yeah, people have given you awards for doing this. So share with us the process, because I think it's extremely important in the current Indian context that people understand how this is done.
Yeah, so thanks very much, Raghuji, for giving your attention and comments and remarks on my work. Actually, it is not my work, it's work of our team. And as you rightly said, that business field is about, it's not being soft-hearted, even if it is not a hard-hearted, but certainly it is. It demands tangible evidences. It demands number crunching. It demands measurability, objectivity in the conversations, in your comments, in your propositions. So that is the very reason. And I'm the student of management. I did my PhD in management, so naturally I had to follow the game. I need to follow the rule of the game. So even if I am interested, excited, and concerned, and I have been a student and experienced the inner journey which anyone can take up with these spiritual practices, something something needs to be presented in a tangible way, in an objective, little bit of measurable way. So probably had I been in the field of philosophy or purely psychology, probably I could get away by explaining and articulating the subjective experiences in the simple English language. But being part of this school of management, we have to have some numbers. So that is the context. How it started, how it happened. There is an interesting anecdote I can share. This whole conversation actually started in the course that was the first course in our PhD program at MDI Gurgaon, taught by Professor Rajan Gupta, who influenced most of us, all of us rather, to take up some original work. So his course was Philosophy and Methodology of Creating Business Knowledge. Basically, philosophy of PMCK, Philosophy and Methodology of Creating Knowledge. And there we used to have conversation about what is knowledge. Is it objective thing or it is a subjective experience? What is truth? It is which is outside, which is captured by the senses, or which is experienced within. So those conversations used to happen, and those were the basis of discussion, and those became the basis of identifying and understanding basically research methodologies. So research methodology, as we know, are primarily quantitative and qualitative in nature. In between, there is systems approach of research, but systems approach also, one school has taken it more towards interpretive aspect, and one school has taken it more towards the objective aspect. So primarily it's interpretive and objective, or interpretivist and positivist schools primarily predominate the conversations and the methods and the research methodology. Interesting thing happened. I always used to be appreciative of the qualitative aspects, the interpretive aspects, and used to emphasize and value that, and kind of had more respect and more kind of pull towards that. And we were like 7, 8 of us, and another colleague of mine who generally, so I used to sit in one corner, and the another corner used to sit this this colleague who has become a fantastic academic, teaches in XLRI, professor these days. So, and he seems to be a great admirer of the quantitative work. And that went on, that dialogue, that samvad went on throughout that course of 3 months. At the end of the PhD program, he ended up doing more qualitative work, and I ended up doing more quantitative oriented number crunching based work. So and at the basis of this, if I look at what is the conceptual foundation, Kane Wilber's framework of subjective, objective, cultural, and structural, that was a fascinating framework. We have always been, you can say, exposed to, and we were aware of what Isha Upanishad says. Means the ninth shlok. It's a ninth verse of the Isha says that those who worship avidya alone, they fall in the blind darkness, and those who worship vidya alone, they also fall into the same even greater darkness. Greater darkness. So this distinction of subjective objective is in our perception, and we cannot perceive everything in one go. So we need to bracket the reality in so-called objective, in so-called subjective way. But reality is not subjective and objective. Reality is that one, that integrated constant awareness. How I approach this, how I explain this, how I convey about my experience, that can be subjective objective. So rather than this being a dilemma or this being a conflict, it's a wonderful game. It's a fantastic, you can say, game, or in a small way, it's kind of a leela where you enjoy the seemingly contrary views about reality, but within yourself, it is talking about the same thing. So from the Isha Upanishad, when we look at the Kane Wilber's framework, who says that any phenomena will have subjective and objective aspect, and it will have cultural and structural aspect. If I am feeling hungry, there is a subjective feeling about being hungry, but there will always be some objective aspects, like some neurotransmitters moving, some enzymes moving in the stomach, all that. So we can identify some objective reflections of the subjective experience of hunger. And same is true with the friendship, with compassion, with fight, with love, with hate, everything. So there is a subjectivity and there is objectivity. Nothing in this world is having only subjectivity and objectivity. We can always find some remnants, some reflection. In fact, if you follow Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev Ji's thoughts and his deliberations, he has given even much macro level interpretation. That is very interesting. It may not be the fact, or whether if it is fact, we don't have the means to check that. At least I don't have, and my colleagues seems to be not having that. But he says that there are cycles of existence, and the number of cycle is reflected in our Panchang tradition of the Hindu tradition, which says that this is these many Shrishtis have been there, and this is nth Shrishti, and according to the days of Brahma and year of Brahma, this whole cycle, the fantastic macro scale of the time. Those who are interested, they can check the notion of time in the dharmawiki.org website. And Sadhguru says that each cycle leaves some remnants of the previous cycle as well.
Absolutely.
So that this somehow kind of got into our intellectual foundation, that subjective objective is something is not to be fight about, something to be play with, something to be to play with, to convey the reality and experience. When you experience the reality, you can actually playfully use these. So somebody asked, what is Kane Wilber? What is the what is in this quadrant, subjective, objective, cultural, and structural. Where is the Atman? And he said that self is at the cross section of these two.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what our Upanishad says, that's ultimate freedom. It can choose to move to any direction and can reflect in any ways. So this is an axiological position as well. When you basically the value is that objectivity and subjectivity have their utility to convey. So in that way, our system and our philosophical system is pretty pragmatic in that sense. Truth, if it is useful, and the ultimate utility is liberating the limited notion of self, limited experience of self. So that happens playfully. I really enjoy doing this on many occasions. And from there, the idea about methodology naturally start coming. For example, in the moral reasoning paper, we used case analysis. And the case is subject to experience. The people were responding to 7 questions related to 2 caselets. And those subjective responses, based on the Kohlberg's framework of moral reasoning, Weber in 91, he's not the Max Weber, that's another Weber who converted that process, gave the process of converting that qualitative response into quantitative response. So we use that in the moral reasoning, and then use many other questionnaires also in the yoga and positive psychology related papers. And numbers have some, as the qualitative insights have fascination, you go to the field, talk to people, and you come to know, okay, this is how people make sense of reality. This is how people experience. This is how people interpret things in life. And that many times happens to be very different from how you interpret things. So that is insightful. But quantitative work also is very, very insightful. Means when you look at, okay, this is a quantitative thing, whether number will reflect the movement in the moral reasoning scores, or whether number will reflect on increase in the psychological capital, or number will reflect the increase in the experience of self-transcendence. Otherwise, self-transcendence sounds a big word, result of great practice, esoteric. But that experience happens on a day-to-day basis to all of us. We may not recognize it, we may not notice that, but if appropriate questions are asked, those questions can help to capture that experience, and we see those experiences becoming more. Prominent when we make.
Of course, when people are aware of it.
Yeah, so people may not be aware, but that is when you collect large sample and you take the response, so that those quantitative things do not remain just the technique, ANOVA and p-value and adjusted R-square. They are almost like a spiritual message to us.
I have a small request, Ashishji. Can you explain some of the key words that you've used? Because they're all very, very interesting, no? Moral reasoning, self-transcendence, flourishing, thriving, and all of this. And you're using all of these words in contexts where individuality and competitiveness is very valued.
Yes.
Right? So there seems to be some tension between these. Yeah. So if you can help us explain these words, and what are the parallels between these words and what we find, let's say, in the Bhagavad Gita or any other text, like you already quoted the Ishavashya and so on. So how have you done this movement? And, connecting these words, because these words are from completely different cultures.
Yes.
And so on. See, there are lots of bridging that you've done here. So can you just explain how you've done this?
Yes. So I can take example of, say, we can start with the psychological capital. I have not used this word, but I think that will be very useful for all of us to understand and to meet our objective of how do we connect the concepts which are originated in the West have can be corroborated with the methods and understanding of the East of the yogic tradition. So psychological capital is the combination of hope, resilience, self-efficacy, and hopefulness and optimism. So these are the four things. So when this positive psychology movement grew, a lot of new the positive constructs were identified. Before that, psychology was more focused on studying ailments and pathologies. And then Martin Seligman became the president of American Psychological Association. American psychologists published the special issue, and then that was a big thrust to the positive psychology, means studying those qualities which are the human potential, which are the reflection of the positive experiences and positive human potential. So courage, wisdom, psychological capital, all these things were studied. If we look at the genesis of these constructs, before this, the psychological capital became popular, and many other constructs became popular, Seligman and his team undertook a massive project to identify what are the characteristics, or what are the positive qualities identified, recognized across the cultures. So they looked at all major traditions, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and they identified 6 components, 6 group of the character strengths: courage, temperance, wisdom, like these. All these 6 were further divided into 4. So total 24 character strengths were identified. So though they have been, many of those constructs, all those constructs rather, they are explained in English, but they are not, they are drawn from the study based, which is a cross-cultural in nature, and across the cultures, these qualities are recognized, these qualities are appreciated, these are kind of ideals. So the distinction is not that much as we think. There is, I'm speaking English, we are talking about yoga, but not that we are not understanding anything about each other. We might be missing out something, but we are able to understand each other to some extent, so that we can take forward our conversations and may find it interesting and all that. So the genesis is not altogether kind of a West. It is. There are certain things which are common across the culture. So from there, these constructs, many of those constructs have come from there. Along with that, our task was, can we connect that with the original thing? Is how that is connected to how psychological capital or flourishing. So psychological capital is about hope, optimism, resilience. For example, titiksha. Now, titiksha is the part of Shada Sampatti that is very close to resilience. When Ishopanishad again says in the second verse, one should aspire to live 100 years to perform his duties in the world, it is a great reflection of optimism and hope that even if everything is one, that is not in a reductionist sense. You can make things and you can enjoy this world. So there is a sense of hope in all that. So that source is there, and there is commonality. At the same time, the beauty is, and the fun part is, how do we reconnect with some of the practices? So in the current academic discourse, we have a lot of constructs, concepts. Some of those are coming from the cross-cultural research. They are meaningful across. They can be understood with plus minus 10% variation across the cultures. Plus, we also need to look at how these are coming from the source. So that was the second question. And West has a lot of, so the current contemporary knowledge, I would not like to distinguish West, East, but we'll say the contemporary knowledge has a lot of concepts. But Indian tradition, Bharatiya tradition, has a lot of interventions. If we and we can say it with some confidence because we have looked at the impact of interventions, yogic interventions and the mind-based interventions, and we could clearly see that yogic interventions are much more impactful. Why? Because most of the discourse, because of this being in the academic setting, is focused on manomaya kosh, what we call in the Indian notion of self. Pranamaya kosh is still largely missing in the scholarly discourse. However, there are certain concepts in the contemporary knowledge systems as well, which can be good indicators of pranamaya kosh.
Very, very interesting.
Like self-transcendence, interoception, subjective vitality. So subjective vitality is sense of energy. Do I feel energized throughout the day? Self-transcendence is, do I have the moment when I experience myself identified with the larger social and external environment? And interoception, which is antardrishti, means my ability to, my sensitivity towards the senses within me. Self-control means my ability to control my senses to not get drawn to the according to my man. They might not be using man, but that's what these operational definition mean. So the second step for us was to identify what are the closest to the pranamaya kosh, which are reflection, which can be connected to the construct which were predominantly manomaya kosh. So that's how the conceptual models were built. Second stage, so if you see many of my last 5-6 papers on positive psychology, on moral reasoning, on flourishing, on creative problem solving, you will see a common research design. First, we make a theoretical model, and next we conduct experiment. So the experiment object, so the survey-based research help us to validate the conceptual model, which is underlying these model is the connection of the pranamaya kosh and manomaya kosh, and little bit of jnanamaya kosh. I am aware the limitation of this work. It is just manomaya kosh and pranamaya kosh, but contemporary knowledge is ready for that, and we are actually ready to explain these things in the scientific language in that sphere only at this moment. I am hoping that with the blessings of gurus and the mentors like you, we will be able to crack a little bit of Vijnanamaya Kosh as well. But if you look at all the models, they are basically combination of Pranamaya Kosh and Manomaya.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The second stage, which is based on the experiment design, we make the intervention yoga-based intervention, and yoga-based intervention impact the pranamaya kosh related variables.
Absolutely.
So the very first experience of doing yoga is heightening of energy. So subjective vitality is you can clearly see the impact in the scores on the subjective vitality. So the second set of hypotheses is the yoga can influence the subjective vitality, self-transcendence, interoceptions. Interestingly, in the biology, there is some phenomena called biomagnification. So what is that biomagnification? When pollutants are added in the river, the trace of those pollutants increases with the food chain. So in the fish, it will be some trace will be there in the fish. Some traces will be there in the plants and small animals, small worms, which fish eat. The percentage of that increases in fish, and the percentage of those pollutants in the birds is even more, goes even more. And that is reflected in some of the things like breaking of the eggs. So a lot of birds are getting extinct because of this phenomenon
Shell.
of
Yeah, the shell becomes too hard and you
becomes too hard or too soft, that breaks down, and the birth of the young birds do not take place. There is a positive side of the magnification. In the pranamaya kosh, little bit of movement reflects in manomaya kosh in a much stronger way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what we are seeing in all our studies. There
That's
would
brilliant.
be like a 0.5, 0.6 out of 5 in the scale of 5 increase in the subjective vitality or self-transcendent. But the impact of that on the psychological capital will be much bigger, maybe 0.6, 0.7. Similar thing happened with the flourishing. So flourishing is positive relationship, positive experience, meaning and purpose. Now, meaning and purpose is common in the Karma Yoga as well.
Correct.
Positive experience is very similar in the Yoga Sutra, what we call Chitta Prasad. Or in the Buddhism, we call the Brahma Vihar. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Piksha. These are some bit of that. For example, Maitri is very common to the positive emotions and positive relationship, which is the variable in the flourishing. So human beings are same. Their deepest experience are, there is a lot of commonality in the deepest experience. They may use different language. Instead of holding on to the language and making that as the basis to identify the difference, we can use same language to connect with each other and identify what is common. That cannot happen without experience, though. If we get entangled only in the words, if we get entangled only in the manomaya kosh, and we do not work on our pranamaya kosh, we cannot experience that little bit as the anandamaya kosh.
Yeah, you can't get in beyond language. You'll get stuck in language.
Yes. So if we have some experience, then these things we can do it in a very playful way. We can connect across the cultures.
Super.
We can find the commonality across the different ways of experiences in the culture. And that is my wish, that we use these Indic knowledges as a deep knowledge, because it is integrative in nature.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it different from the contemporary knowledge, which is predominantly occupied in the manomaya kosh or little bit of vijnanamaya kosh. But what is the age of the contemporary knowledge? 150 years.
Exactly.
And what is the age of the culture which we are so fortunate to be part of? That is thousands of years. But even in the 150 years of journey of the social science research, we can see the urge to have more integrated perspective of knowledge. Otherwise, there wouldn't be constructs like interoception. There wouldn't be constructs like self-transcendence. So instead of using these differences or using this diversity to create differences, we can use these things to build a collective shared understanding about life. And my wish is that in a little way, we can do, my team is trying to do that through our research. That's what we do most. We do not know anything else but to do social science research. And my last thing is all that has to be supported with some practice.
Of course.
So if we do not have some practice, be it Ashtanga Yoga, be it Bhakti Yoga, be it Jnana Yoga, whatever be your Swadharma, whatever is your nature, but some sadhana is inevitable to, otherwise we can get swayed, and otherwise these things cannot happen.
I'm going to ask you a question, Ashiji, which is kind of, you've led up to it in many ways in what you're saying. See, one of the struggles I think a lot of people experience in India is this dichotomy between tradition and modernity. Okay, it's placed as a binary, it's placed as this versus that, right? So, for example, if somebody speaks in Sanskrit, he will immediately be called not modern, right? It's a very simple anecdote. No? I was sitting in an airport once, and I was sitting with a friend, and 4 people walked by wearing really nice white dhoti and beautiful kurtas. So this friend says, "Hey, look at all these lungi fellows, man." Right. So there is an immediate idea that we have somehow internalized. One, that there is something called tradition versus modernity. Okay. And the second, that anything Indian is somehow only traditional, right? Because most people don't know the history of mathematics, for example, where we have a continuity across 2000 years of constant innovation in mathematics, which no other civilizational entity has. No, every other civilization entity, the mathematical continuity has got broken, right? And you have Navya Nyaya. It's not as though Nyaya is only. You have Sankhya that has been changing. All the philosophies have had dialogues. They've been changing all the time. But the modern Indian is stuck with this versus. Right. And in a lot of your work, I see you having transcended it and navigated it. Yeah, like what we are talking about, myself, Saiji, and all of us, we're saying there is Sanatana, which is the deep human, what is enduring in human reality, is Sanatana. There is Nitya Nutana, which is the emergent. Right? The emergent does not take away the fundamental reality of human existence, which is why you can read a Mahabharata, or you can read Iliad, or you can read one of those things and understand the human struggle involved there. No? And I see you navigating this binary also very well in all your work. Yeah? So can you expand on this a little bit? Because I think that's very interesting for anybody who's studying Indian stuff, likes Indian stuff. But all of us are also modern. Many of us know science. Many of us are involved in an emergent reality. And if we don't understand this bridging, there's going to be inner conflict. And if it's understood as the tradition is somehow less than, then my genius has to be held back and put inside a box. I don't see you doing that. I see you flying. So can you explain this also for us and help us to look at this struggle? Has your group experienced the struggle? How have you engaged with it? What happens when you talk to other people? Because you use words like Loka Sangraha. I like, the way you bring your papers, you talk about flourishing, suddenly you bring in some Karma Yoga and some Sanskrit terms and slowly kind of bring these two together. Yeah. So how is it accepted? How do you navigate this binary?
You rightly said that obstacle is not in science. Obstacle is not in the community who is interested in the good science. Obstacles is in our mind. So it is actually the remnant of colonization, which are mostly intellectual in nature. These are the obstacles. In life, there is no obstacle. Arth and Kam are equally valid pursuit as Dharma and Moksha. We never said that Moksha is the only pursuit or the supreme pursuit of life. It cannot happen because whatever has to happen in this world only. Atmavat sarva bhusheshu ya pashyati ya pashyashi sa pashyati. So this morality, spirituality, and business in this culture has always been considered together because life is integrated. we were a few minutes ago we were referring the Isha Upanishad, where the Vidya and Avidya, if you are entangled in both, you are in the darkness. So neither our text says this, nor a good science asks for that. Good science, by definition, is interested in exploring the truth.
True.
It is based on the very thought of Karl Popper about falsification is very similar to what we call neti neti.
Correct.
Paradigm shift, the work of Kuntz. It also talks about the different schools of thoughts and how different schools emerge. This keeps happening in the field of knowledge. How come we ended up having nine predominant darshanas? Because somebody in the beginning, the Sankhya was there. We consider Sankhya to be the oldest, but then somebody would have said that no, the reality can be explained in some other words as well. Or the reality itself can be different. That's
Sankhya
how
itself has 3 forms, no?
Yeah, Sankhya itself has 3 forms. The Yoga Darshan itself has kind of got modified. New practices got added into it. When the first time Ashtanga Yoga was mentioned in the Upanishad as well, Pratyahara is mentioned in the Upanishad as well.
That's right.
But when it is explained in the later text, more modifications will come. When in the first text, the only few asanas, 12, 13 asanas were mentioned. But when you look at the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you have 84 asanas. So all that modifications, all that things have happened. My favorite quote is that truth of life are all same, but language of the yoga, the language of time changes. So
Bahuda Vipra Bhavanti.
Yeah, so the language has to be according to that time, and the current time, the language is more like following. Language is more tilted positivist approach. So it is not a compulsion; it's a fun. Okay, the whole thing can be looked at in a positivist way. As we can use positivism. Actually, this is not the better way. Is we can use positivism to convey the eternal ideas, as we can use interpretivism to convey the idea. Because anyway, positivism or interpretivism, qualitative or quantitative, anyway, they are not capable of conveying the core idea.
No, what you're saying is extremely interesting, Ashishji, because I don't know if the people who did the Vienna Declaration of the Positivists would agree with you, but I like the way you have in a sense, you're questioning their very premise that there is something called positivist versus the rest, no? So I think this is very, very interesting way going forward. Yeah, I was just wondering if we can open the thing out for other people to ask questions. Yeah, because otherwise you and I will get completely absorbed in what we are saying and we leave the others behind. Yeah. Yes, Namrata, do you have any audience questions that you'd like to pose to Ashish ji?
Yes, there has been one question in the chat box.
Yeah, I can read that.
Yeah. If transcendence happens to everyone, irrespective of whether they are aware of it or not, why is yoga needed as a practice to improve awareness or attention?
You said this right in the beginning, Ashish ji, when you were talking about the measurement and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why is yoga needed? Meaning, may not be needed Ashtanga Yoga. I am not saying only Ashtanga Yoga, only the asanas and pranayam. I don't mean yoga only with asana and pranayam. Whatever the sadhana we do is yoga. So there is a paper of Ajinkya Navare and mine on path of yoga. So we try to understand 4 predominant paths. There are many paths. If you follow the some other typologies, there can be 30, 40 or even more typologies for the yogas, but we simply followed what Swami Vivekananda has given, the 4 paths of yoga: bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga and raja yoga. Whatever we do is comes into that, because Atmavat Sarvabhuteshu Ya Pashyasi Sa Pandita, if that is the objective, that can be realized through the bhakti or karma or gyan. So I think the question is based on the assumption that yoga means of only the asanas or something. Yes, no, you can experience that.
No, I'm wondering, Ashiji, whether the question is, if it's happening all the time, why any practice at all?
Oh, why any practice at all?
Any practice, that's how I'm reading it.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Because in my understanding, we have taken one step forward, because yoga says that the first realization that is, I am in dukkha. If I don't do anything, I'll continue to be in dukkha. So only then you get into practice, no?
Yes.
And practice is necessary. Without practice, you'll just reinforce the old. That's the sense in which I'm reading that question. So can you elaborate on that?
I fully agree with you. Yes. My favorite explanation to this, why do yoga or any type of yoga, is that there is no need if you're not interested in the fast growth process. Hamare corporates mein we say there's a fast track. So nature is evolving. It is not same as it was a lakh year before or a million year before. Nature is evolving. With nature, we all will evolve. But some of us are not interested in just following the nature space. We want to experience that in our lifetime. We want to experience that oneness in our lifetime. We want to experience that Atmavat Sarvabhuteshu in our lifetime. So we need to do the practice. If I'm not interested in the growth, then I can go on with the nature's trials, tribulations thrust upon me, and sometime we will go up, sometime we will go down, and then like a broken leaf, the breeze of air will take us in some direction at some point of time, in some other direction in some point of time. That will keep happening, but ultimately we will realize Akashat Padatantoyam Sagaram Pratigachati. So the drop will certainly meet the ocean, but I want to do it in my lifetime. I want to experience bliss in my lifetime. That is my agenda. If it is your agenda, follow the practice. And how beautiful this world will be. Imagine people just going by the nature space, or people engaged in their self-reflection, self-growth, realizing the bliss, realizing the Anandamaya Kosh, and helping each other in doing that. That will be what kind of world we want to live. We want to live in the world where naturally we are fighting, dying, taking rebirth or whatever, or we want to help each other, grow together, Sena Bhavatu, Sena Bhuvanatu, Saivijam. How that will happen? That will happen with the practice. That will make the life more joyful. That will make the world more beautiful. That will make the life experience more kind of flourishing. So that's why we have to.
Interestingly, Ashishji, I was reading a small piece this morning, which is talking about the behaviors of elite people who have achieved a lot. Yeah, it talks about discipline in food. It talks about regular exercise. It talks about some kind of self-reflective practices, and it talks about brahmacharya. I found it very interesting that these are people who do not run after pleasure. These are people who focus their energy on productivity.
Yes.
Yeah, so it comes back to some form of yoga, like you're saying, no?
Yeah. That's a yama. Or niyama.
That's a yama. I was quite surprised. Yeah, I was quite surprised. Yeah.
There's one more question.
Yeah, you can see the questions? Okay.
Yeah. How we can see detachment in current scenario and how people will distinguish.
There's one before that, Ashishji. Personal achievement seems to trump collective wisdom among folks studying in IITs especially. Do you think these folks are aware of self-awareness and the broader dimensions of responsibility? I think there are 2-3 of us from IIT sitting in this panel.
Yeah.
We can all see if we have an answer. Boliye bhai sahab.
Personal achievement seems to trump the collective wisdom among the folks. We all start with the personal. Personal achievement. So that's perfectly. That's a design of life. We can say that may not be the perfect situation, but that's the design of life. We all start with the personal achievement because it is individually I have to prepare for the JEE. It is individually I have to crack the exam. So, but even in that process, many students discover the power of collective work, power of teamwork. I was the MBA program. I realized it a little later in my career, but not even later. Even if I look at like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, it was not only individual work. No, I didn't go to IIT to study. I am here to teach. I went to some other college, but that was not a personal. If I cannot see myself, whatever percentage, and I was kind of a national merit scholarship holder and all that, whatever is considered to be the achievement, but a lot of friends actually helped me in, and I can't forget that. So it is not personal achievement alone. There are always some teachers involved, some good teachers, some good friends, some study group which is involved. So it's not that they are oblivious to the collective effort. When they come back, you will be Sharad Joshi ji, who is asking this question. We come across that in IIT there are. Everybody talks about placement and the achievement orientation, but you might be happy to know that we also have a club called Abhyudaya Club, which is dedicated to the social entrepreneurship. There are also a lot of social work activities carried out by students themselves. There are a lot of collective reading study groups where people help each other. That happens together. So it is not personal achievement. It is always a collective thing. Our job, so the job is, I think, the more powerful inertia, or you can say the more important job now for us is to create institutions and systems where we facilitate the collective success, where we become aware of that, importance of that, we operate for that. That becomes, and that should become the criteria for success. That should become the criteria for achievement. So I asked these kids in the BTech program, who are your ideals? And they do not point out ideals to they identify some names. And I asked them, why you consider them ideals? They said that they have achieved something. So we have some buildings in the IIT Bombay campus. Crescent, for example, that is named after F.C. Kohli, and there is a building by constructed with the support of the Nandal Nilekani. So they point out to those names attached to those buildings. They said that they have achieved, but they have shared their wealth. They have shared their success with others. So they are considered to be the ideals. They are considered to be the heroes, not those who just achieve. So it is not like all individual success, but there is a lot for all of us to keep defining keep doing things for the collective, keep doing things for the integrative development. I can give one example, and that in last few years, Yes Bank, for example, is not has been in the news not for the very positive reasons. However, before that, I wrote a case study on that, and why I was so impressed with that. They developed products for the daily laborers, construction workers, daily wage earners. They created products, banking products. So like this, all the organizations, institutions have to figure out for those things which are not based on the utilitarian ethics, which are not based on the maximum good for maximum number of things, which are based on the integrative ethics, which is the Indic wisdom says, Sarve vai sukhina santu, sabka vikas hona chahiye. There is no compromise. Sarve vai sukhina santu, sarve santu nirama. can we create systems which inherently by design are aimed at Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantु? That to me is the scientific challenge. That is the real scientific challenge, and that realization, and again Raghuji, that is the axiological perspective, and that kind of science is needed. What Vivekananda used to say, benevolent science and benevolent research. So we are moving towards that. I'm quite hopeful. And I'm seeing things happening, systems evolving,
of course,
people doing so.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
And when I was in IIT, which is way back, we had a professor who made sure that we did work which was relevant. No, how do you make cheap windmills with, with bamboo, using palmyra trees, and with, jute. All kinds of phenomenal stuff. Yeah. The problem is the press doesn't highlight these things. The press likes to highlight who's the fellow who got some 40 lakhs in his interview and things like that.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who have done phenomenal work and who have given up the other so-called the successful, the usually accepted norms of success and worked in other areas. I mean, so many examples of it.
There's one more question. How we can see detachment in current scenario, and how people will distinguish uninterrupted desires and endless effort needed to survive in this world. Manya, I will say, don't worry about detachment on a regular basis. Just experience detachment for half an hour every day. We can experience half an hour every day. We can experience 20 minutes Shunya meditation every day. If we experience that much detachment, our muscle get built, and whenever it is required, we will be able to detach. Bodybuilders do not, or the athlete, they do not exercise 24 hours. They exercise for a few hours. Similarly, in the yogic path, you have even few minutes are good enough. If we can experience that detachment for a few minutes every day, that will build our mental muscle. Then we will know how to detach from a scenario, to have a broader perspective, to have a view from the distance, and that will help us to look at the desires as well. That will help us to look at how much desire is good enough. There's no end to the worldly pursuit, and that will calibrate, and that will give us compass, which direction to go, and that will give also us the brakes, when to brake, when to come to the service road, when to come back to the 5th gear, when to change the gear and come to the 0 gear. That will happen. So that will happen. My message is, my request and invitation is, just experience attachment for 20 minutes every day.
Ashishji, before we go to the next question, I think Anilji had raised his hand, so just invite him. He would like to ask his question.
Sure. Thank you, Namrata. So, Raghu, brilliant questions, and Ashishji, you took them, the integrative view that you brought in is very powerful. My question is, what are the early seeds you may not have shared today in the talk so far of your research going forward? What are you truly passionate about that is emerging and we can look forward to in the next 2-3 years from the work you are involved in?
Currently, I am involved in fascinating work. Actually, that word fascinating for researcher is kind of a cliche, because we are fascinated about all the new, so many new ideas. Every time we start working on a project, we think that world is going to be changed now. so just take it with not a pinch of salt, lot of salt. Two things I'm really kind of passionate and looking forward get shaped up in the months or years to come. One is the social healing and organizational healing aspect. We all are familiar about the impact of yoga at the personal transformation, personal well-being. But there is a great work happening, and yoga is the foundation of that. Art of Living Foundation is doing it. Krishnacharya Mandar is doing it. Ramdevji is doing it. Isha Foundation is doing it. So many schools, very, very brilliant organizations, great institutions are doing it. They are doing not only the individual healing, they are not only doing the individual development, they are doing the collective development. Organizational healing is happening through their work. Social health healing is happening through their work. So that is one piece. We are doing some case study now. So Raghuji, now I am doing less of the positivist number crunching based work and more interpretive and case study work. So,
I'll also give you a story, hopefully, Ashish ji, on this. Because I'm engaged with doing some work with Orwell on what is collective healing. How can collective transformation take place? So let's see how it goes. We'll share it with you. Yeah.
So that is one thing. And secondly, we are preparing a platform. Thankful to HDFC Argo, which has supported it kind of generously, for the assessment of the overall well-being and customized intervention at very low cost. So we are aiming to provide this to anyone and everyone who is interested at a very low cost. Our framework is ready. We are transferring it to the technological platform. Some of my friends have promised that they will certainly convert these things into a nice platform which is friendly, usable, and pleasant to use. So these are the two things mostly kind of I am looking forward to. One more thing is which is kind of a which will shake up little, take a little longer, is the policy-based transformation. So the public leadership as exercise as being practiced, and some of the policies, well thought through policies, are also paving the pathway for the social transformation. So that is the third thing.
Thank you. That's extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's very positive. Yeah.
In fact, like while the social healing and the collective healing Raghu was speaking about, I'm very passionate about the organizational healing that in the context I work in. So would love to know more offline later. Thank you.
We have a very committed, passionate research scholar, Aditya Agrawal ji. He is now faculty member in FLAME. He also liked this idea and he worked very well on this. He has in fact created the instrument, has done some case studies. So we all can look forward to his research output in the months to come.
Thank you, Ashish.
There's one more question. You want to read it out, Namrita?
Yeah. It is Shilpa Sameer ji has just asked, can you please explain the word detachment, the exact meaning according to you?
In my experience and understanding, detachment is my ability to look at my thoughts and my desires and my emotions from a distance. Detachment to me is very close to the self-reflection. Reflection, in my understanding, is not possible without detachment. And when every morning we do it in the asanas and pranayam, that muscle is built and we can use it throughout the day. And next day we have to again do the practice. There are no Sundays. In the yoga practice, there are no Sundays and holidays. So like battery has to be charged every day, mobile phone, we have to charge, then we can experience that.
There's one more question. I don't know if I'll read it out for you. I find it amazingly interesting that whoever wrote the scriptures and gave this knowledge as Mahabharata, Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, wrote it as stories and gave us layers of depth through them. From your studies of these scriptures, can you share what you have gathered about the time when this was written, obtained, or what kind of people they were. They're asking you for anthropological, historical question, Ashish ji.
Yeah, in my study, we could not dwell much on the scripture, particularly the Mahabharata. Scripture, basically it is Itihas, or Puran is this. Puran we call, that is closer to scripture. Itihas is the Mahabharata and Ramayana. I am really looking forward doing this kind of research in the years to come. But one thing I must say, that if we are practicing a little bit, we can delayer the different stories or different incidences given in these texts. So whatever the yoga we follow, bhakti yoga or jnana yoga or karma yoga, we can understand and we can appreciate these stories much better way, and we can go closer to the essence of these things.
Can I add something here, Ashish ji?
You have studied more of Mahabharata.
Yeah, I use it quite a lot, Mahabharata and Ramayana, Mahabharata especially. See, what I have found is two things. One, in our tradition, theater and dance and all of these traditions, which are also part of yoga and inner work traditions, it's expressly stated that understanding the Vedas and the Upanishads and all that is difficult. So can we create a rasatmik, story-filled way of helping people look at themselves? So these stories are not written for entertainment. They're actually stories written for reflection. So the way we use it in Ritambara and some other places I work in is to say, when I'm reading a story of Yudhishthira or Bhima or whatever, can I reflect and see what parts of me are like this person? And the interesting thing about these books is that they tell you both sides of the energetic possibilities. So when you read Mahabharata, let's say, you have to look at Bhishma and Yudhishthira as two sides of the same coin. Yeah, Duryodhana and Bhima as two sides of the same coin. Sahadeva and Shakuni as two sides of the same coin. Because we have these raw capabilities and we have to make choices of how we apply these capabilities, which is also why yoga and all of these things are important. Because without that, like Ashish was saying before, we will be like blown in the wind. We'll use it sometimes like this, sometimes like that, without any self-determination, without any swadharma, and so on, no? So that is what these stories are expressly written for. So in the beginning of many of these stories, there'll be one small dialogue between Brahma and Vyasa, for example, in Mahabharata. So Vyasa says, why do you want me to write such a big book? So Brahma will give him an idea and say, no, you have to write it because there is dharma is going down, and unless you write this book full of human drama and emotion, we can't help people understand dharma again, so please write it. So he'll say yes, and similar thing. Bharatanatyam, there's a similar story, and so on. So that's the context for all of these stories. So what they were, in a sense, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter at all what kind of people they were. All that matters is when you read these stories, I can discover what kind of a person I am. And when you read stories like Mahabharata and Ramayana, it's just amazing. What a brilliant, what a deep story, you know. And how many layers, how many nuances. So the mind of the person who wrote it, I'm just fascinated. Every time I read any of these stories or work with it, just utterly fascinating, the depth at which these people have written it. And that a story can actually contain so much of human reality is itself amazing. Yeah, but fundamentally, I don't think we should worry about them. We should worry about us. That's what they were written for.
That's the real objective. That's Great.
Yeah, there are no more questions. Ashish ji, can you give us some closing remarks of how people interested in study and research can go forward, and whatever else you think might be good closing remarks?
I would like to share about three things. One is that we have in our team in IIT Bombay with the it was initiated by Professor Ganesh Ramkrishnan from Computer Science Department, and now I'm part of that team. We are working on the dharmawiki.org. So all of you can visit the website dharmawiki.org. You will get to know a lot of concepts presented we have tried to present it in as a scholarly manner as we could learn from our teachers and gurus and mentors. So those who are interested in research.
I refer to it once in a while. So I recommend people to look it up. Dharma Wiki is very nice. Yeah.
Thanks very much. So that is one. Secondly, we are doing this self-awareness based course in IIT Bombay in School of Management for last 10 years. This was only for the MBA students first year, but this time, this course in the name of Yoga and Positive Psychology for Managing Career and Life, that is available on NPTEL. So this course is available on the NPTEL, and many of you might be aware that NPTEL courses are free. If you want certificate, then only the examination fee will be required to be paid. That is also very small amount. So with that amount, you can get the certificate, and the course content will be freely available to anyone who register for this, and in fact, it will be uploaded on the YouTube as well. That course is going to start in the month of February. That course registration is on, so you can check for the NPTEL course on the Yoga and Positive Psychology. That can be useful for the researchers as well, because a lot of thoughts are integrated there from the Ayurveda, Yoga, and contemporary knowledge about the positive psychology. So you can look up to that course. And of course, there are papers. You can just look at the Google Scholar profile of mine. Some people have asked, where can you find my papers? All those are available in the Google Scholar. So you can Google Scholar, look at the Google Scholar, my page, and you will get all the papers on the yoga and various topics related to the Indian knowledge system and its implication on the management. Thanks very much to Indica, to the center for giving me opportunity to share our work. Thanks to my teacher, Professor Rajan Gupta, with whom I learned a lot. Thanks to my team members, Professor Ajin Kinavre from SP Jain, who worked on fantastic work on Karma Yoga, Chirag Dagar, who is teaching in OP Jindal University. He has very committed and done some fundamental work on the Yoga and Positive Psychology and Ayurveda and the notion of well-being in Ayurveda and Sankhya created in a way. Currently, our current researcher Soumya, who is working on the cognition and the yoga and different kind of attention and how attention literature can be enriched with the notion of Chitta Bhumi. It is not only the kind of attention, it is the kind of mind which needs to be nurtured in certain way, which result in certain kind of attention. She's working Sadhana Sargam.
That's very brilliant, yeah, because it talks about Bhumishu Viniyogaha, na, in the Yoga Sutra. Very interesting, yeah.
So Sadhana Sargam, she is working on the responsible leadership and mindfulness. I already mentioned Aditya Agrawal working on the organization healing. So I must say, what they say in English, what is your claim for fame? So my claim for fame is that I've got excellent mentors, and fantastic students, very motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the way you were enumerating their names and the joy in your face when you were talking about it, I really think so. Yeah, having a great team to work with is a real gift.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Ashish. Thank you very much. Yeah, there are some funda questions about Ken Wilber, which I'll ask you later.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody did.